Well, Alpesh Patel from 5.45am Partners is with us this morning to go through these papers. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Let's start with the Pope, shall we?
Certainly. It's a good way to start any morning.
Well, the battle over faith, says the Times. Do you see this as a battle?
Well, I think so. And I think I can empathise and sympathise this notion that it's almost as if people are ashamed to wear their religion, as it were, particularly I'm speaking as a non-Christian, particularly a country like Britain, which does have Christian roots. It's almost as if you point to people who, I don't know whether they carry a cross, whether it's on British Airways or at their desk or something, there's something odd about them. I've just come back from India, which is a famously secular country as well, and it's the same thing with many of the Hindus there. It's almost as if, well, you must be a bit odd if you're talking about religion. And so I can see the point is trying to make, that this is not something to be embarrassed about.
Well, he was well received, wasn't he, anyway, despite fears to the contrary. And I just want to introduce this other slightly light note, and that involves the Prince Philip, who, of course, met the Pope off his plane. And there is a new papal tartan that's been designed specially for the tour. So Prince Philip has asked a woman, leader of the Scots Tories, if she had knickers made of this papal tartan, and she said she couldn't possibly comment, and if she had, she couldn't possibly exhibit them.
It's only Prince Philip,
is nothing sacred, and I doubt Prince Philip said that, and I'm going to call him a little bit later and ask him if he did.
Do let us know.
I doubt he said it.
Let's talk about the row with France and the EU over the expulsion of the Roma gypsies. It's hotting up, and the language is getting quite descriptive as well.
Yes, the issue here will be who's going to back down. The French clearly are not going to. They're going to continue evicting these Roma gypsies. It goes to the heart of what it means to have free movement within the EU. But also it begs the question, where's the EU been up till now? Because this has been ongoing for at least 18 months, and it's not just out of France, it's been the Romas out of Italy as well. And it'll be interesting to see what happens once it's not Caucasians, once it starts being people with brown skin, so it becomes even more clear what's actually going on. And this is a very uncharitable act by the French.
What should the EU do?
Well, they're trying to enforce EU regulations. What they're saying is that this is unlawful by the French to remove the Romas from these camps. The French are saying, well, they're illegal immigrants, and under domestic law it isn't. So it's going to be a battle of the two legal systems. Of course, what tends to happen with these things is that it becomes, to use a French phrase, fait accompli. They're going to be removed first, and then the legal battle will happen afterwards.
Moving on to El País, the Spanish daily. Basically, another indication of the malaise that is affecting the whole, really, the whole coal industry, isn't it?
Well, if you saw the Trade Union Congress annual general meeting, you'll have seen quite aggressive discussions by the unions in Britain as well about striking as public spending is cut. We haven't actually seen widespread striking across the likes of Italy, Spain and France in particular as yet, and they tend to be at the forefront of strikes, partly because they have a greater tradition of direct action in that manner. And I don't think we're going to see it either, despite these severe cuts. Unions have been weakened across Europe over the last couple of decades. So whilst you see little blockades like this, you're not going to see a sort of a mass crippling of the European economy, despite occasional threats like this. So I'm not overly worried that it's going to have a massive economic impact.
What could have a massive economic impact is what we were talking about earlier, is the appreciation of the yuan. And Timothy Geithner already said he wants to see it appreciate, but if it goes too quickly, that could have an adverse reaction.
Yes, what we're going to remember here is the massive trade deficit between the United States and America. An appreciation of the yuan would balance trade and allow American companies to be a bit more competitive against their Chinese counterparts. The Chinese, very unhelpfully for the Americans, tend to shadow the dollar. The bigger issue here is that the Americans have got midterm elections coming up. So they're banging the drum and all trying to be nationalistic. The Chinese, being stereotypically, and if we can use the cliche, belligerent, is saying, well, this can backfire. We're not going to be pushed around, is effectively what they're saying between the lines. So the Americans probably need to tone it down a little bit, despite their election campaigns coming up.
Let's move to Georgia, shall we, where we understand now, as a result of the Moscow Times, that Russian is giving way to English, and I suppose you could blame it on Bill Gates, couldn't you?
Well, it's happening all over the place. I mean, you know, all these other languages are somewhat under threat, but the Russians have been pretty good. I mean, the French are pretty good at keeping hold of their language as well, and I'm not sure whether it's English or American, but it's interesting what will happen as we go forward and we get more and more uniformity of language. We've heard the story about the Chinese, you recall from last week, the Chinese trying to push Mandarin in British schools and promoting that as an international language. We don't have the Russians being so nationalistic, as it were, with their language.
Well, indeed, that is the case, certainly in Georgia, where Russia is no longer the official second language, but English is. Alpesh Patel from 5.45am Partners, thank you very much indeed for going through the papers with us this morning. That's all from Sally and from me for now. Goodbye.